Good morning, Chairperson, members Garrett and Bollendorf, staff and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording's begun.
Thank you, Dustin. Good morning, everybody. We're going to convene the Liquor and Cannabis Board Caucus meeting for Valentine's Day, Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. Our first item today is a legislative update, and Mark Webster joins us. Are you up there, Mark? Are you on the hill, as they say?
I am.
Okay.
Coming to you from the insurance building.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Good morning, Chair Postman and board members Garrett and Bollendorf. Yesterday, our social equity bill, substitute Senate Bill 5080, had its first hearing in Ways and Means. Board member Garrett testified on it and did an absolutely fantastic job. Rick, Becky, and I were in the hearing room, and I think we all agreed that the hearing went pretty well. It's a very tough spot. There's 10 bills on a wide variety of topics, very tight timelines for testimony, but I think members really got a sense of why the bill was important. We had a Tacoma City Council member speak to it, and many in the industry and stakeholders did as well. Board member Garrett, sorry for the delay in getting all of our final plan together, but even on short notice, I thought you did a fantastic job, on testimony. Our THC bill, Senate Bill 5367, passed the Senate Labor and Commerce Committee yesterday after taking on some technical amendments that we frankly think make it better. There are still calls to lower that THC threshold, and the sponsor acknowledged that upon passing the bill yesterday. But I think the bill is in a very good spot at the moment. Justin and the communications team have been working on a document that will hopefully walk members through some of the misunderstandings or maybe outright misstatements that we've heard about that bill in testimony, particularly on the House side. Some of the bills that we've been following that have been a little more of a concern are getting better. The bill allowing restaurants to deliver alcohol has removed third-party delivery. That one's up for exec, I think, today. Not sure that it's in a place we can support it, but it's continuing to kind of move in the right way or in the right direction. There's a bill on licensing from Senator Schessler, 5291, that was a very serious concern initially, but I think he took a lot of the feedback at a meeting we had with licensing director Becky Smith as well as Rick, and I think the bill is actually workable now. It's up for exec here in a few minutes. The bill that would have barred our enforcement officers from stopping youth suspected of buying tobacco and vape has been amended to allow such stops in the vicinity of retailers. I think that's a limit that that we're okay with, as we do retain the ability to hold merchants accountable that are selling tobacco and vape to kids. And board member Bollendorf, I'd still like to speak to many of the folks in the public health community that have been supporting the bill. I think there's been some skepticism around the need for this kind of authority beyond the standard compliance checks. But enforcement has really helped me and the legislature, I think, understand that we often need more than one tool in the tool belt to fulfill the public safety mission. So we're trying to get a meeting together, and I will keep you apprised of that, board member Bollendorf, and hopefully we can just talk to the folks about their concerns and where we see the bill going. A bill removing our authority over cannabis retail sign size had an amendment that would have removed still more authority from us, but it didn't pass, thankfully. So we're definitely playing some defense as we try to keep our agency request bills moving. The subpoena bill remains on the floor calendar. Joining it in the Senate is the Interstate Compact bill, or the so-called trigger bill that would allow the governor to compact with other states upon federal legalization of cannabis. And then a final reminder, our social equity bill in the House has a hearing this week, and that is on Thursday morning. And with that, I'll take any questions.
I got one quick one on the trigger bill.
Yeah.
Does that still look like it did when it was introduced, or was it amended to include that California language?
It was not. And I see some amendments on the House version as well, but not that one.
Okay, I think that's good. Great,
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions for?
I have a quick question. So, Mark, thank you, first of all, and thanks for the weekly written updates as well. Super helpful. I just wanted to ask a question going back to the licensing bill. You said that it was amended, it's more workable. Can you just share a little bit more about the changes that were made to that?
Sure. So the original version for certain license types, it just said that after 30 days, you've got to issue a temporary one, and after a certain amount of time, it's automatically given. What we've tried to say, in addition to lengthening the timeline, is the clock should start when all the documentation has been provided to us. That is, we're not going to allow somebody to run out the clock by simply not responding or not giving us any information and then automatically getting a license. So if all the documentation's in, then we can start the clock. And 30 days was probably not, probably too short anyway, so we've moved it to 45. But I think the key is really making sure that we have all the documentation that we need before you start the clock.
Great, thank you. That's super helpful.
And that hasn't actually been amended yet, has it?
Well, I was just checking that. Yeah, yes, it's up for exec today.
Okay.
The amendment wasn't out until yesterday evening, so it was definitely a kind of a trust but verify situation. We'd heard he was taking on these amendments, but it was actually good to see them in print.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Looks like that's it. Thank you, Mark. Talk to you later. Now we're going to go into executive session for 30 minutes. It's an executive session with legal counsel and human resources pursuant to RCW 423110. This is to review potential litigation risks and legal risks related to a proposed action. I anticipate the executive session will conclude at 10:40, which time we'll come back. If we finish before that, we'll stand at ease till 10:40. If it needs to go longer than that, we'll come at 10:40 and let you know what the new time is. Is that everything we need to say before we go? Everybody ready?
I think so.
Okay, and then
We need to go at ease until 10:10.
oh, we got to go at ease for 2 minutes or a minute and a half here, because we set a time at 10:10. I could probably talk for a minute and 15 seconds. That's not very hard for me, And when we do come back after those that are going to the executive session, just hold on and there'll be a breakout room that'll put us in the executive session.
We're going to go into executive session for about half an hour in like 30 seconds. We want to come back at like 10:40. It's the longest minute and 15 seconds ever.
I know. See, I should have just talked.
Sing a song.
Yeah. Okay, stand by, everybody.
Y'all not whispering, Rick.
Oh, that's good about a meeting we had. Okay. Okay, the board is back in regular session for its caucus meeting. We've concluded our executive session. Next up, though, we have a quarterly human resources review with Anita Bingham, our director of HR. Hello.
Hello, thank you. Good morning. Oops.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes.
So I'm here to share some information about our employee engagement survey. And did you have the PowerPoint?
I'm looking for it.
Getting the PowerPoint for us.
Give me 1 second. I had the wrong thing open. Here we go.
All right, I think we can go on to the next slide, Justin. So there were 79 state agencies and 2 higher ed institutions that participated in 2022. And in comparing our results from 2021 to 2022, we made gains in all our positive responses in almost all our standard questions. We only had 3 questions that were lower, and those were only by 1%. So
Which were those? I can't read this from here. Which were the 3 that were lower?
oh,
I'll check later.
okay. Sorry, I didn't bring a copy.
That's okay, yeah.
Okay, so question 19. In general, I'm satisfied with my job, remain the same at 77%, compared with the enterprise 74%. And this question is thought to be an indicator of employee retention. So that's why we kind of look at that one. Question 20, I would recommend my agency as a great place to work, was 73%. This question is an indicator of how likely an employee would be to help us with recruitment efforts. Question 21 is the rotating question. My agency encourages belonging in the workplace. Last year it was worded as inclusion, so just slightly different. It dropped by 1% to 75%, but we're still well above the enterprise 65%. So 10 points higher than the rest of the enterprise on that one. Question 22 is a new supplemental question regarding communicating safety protocols. The LCB is at 72% and the enterprise is at 76%. So we're a little, I think that may be the only question we're a little below the enterprise on. So we might want to think about how we get some information out about our safety practices here. Questions 23 through 26 are the new pro-equity anti-racist questions developed by the Office of Equity. And we do have a slide later that's broken down by division, and I'll share the comparison with the rest of the enterprise when we see that slide. Questions 27 and 28 are new ADA questions developed with the Disability Inclusion Network. Question 27 asks about employees knowing how to ask for a reasonable accommodation. We were at 68% and the enterprise was at 64%. It's pretty close. Question 28 asks about employees with disabilities recommending their agency to people living with a disability. We were at 69% versus 58% for the enterprise. So next slide, please. So our respectful workplace policy that went into effect December of 2020 uses 2 survey questions to measure how the agency is doing in maintaining a respectful workplace. We have a goal of 90% positive to both questions 7 and 10. Question 10 is the spirit of cooperation and teamwork exist in my work group. We're currently at 85% on that one, so we're a bit short of our goal. With 91%, we're slightly above our goal on the second question. My supervisor treats me with dignity and respect. So that's good. We're meeting the goal there. Next slide. This slide shows the results by division. The board, director, deputy, HR, and communications policies, we're all grouped together there in that first group so we can protect confidentiality since we're smaller groups. You will see the participation rate at the top though. For instance, IT scores fairly high, but only 51 of our employees identified that they worked in IT. And you are able to skip the division that you work in when you take the survey. So it's a little hard to know exactly because we did have a number of people that didn't identify which division they work in. Next slide. These questions have the biggest increase from last year. Question 5, I had opportunities at work to learn and grow, grew by 10% to 73%. And question 14, I'm encouraged to come up with better ways of doing things, was up 10% also to 68%, but that's still one of our lowest scoring questions. So probably need to think about what we can do there. Question 2, I received helpful communication from my agency, was up 7% to 74%. So good trend there. And our questions with the lowest scores were question 11. I know how my agency measures success. It was up 5% from last year, but it's still only at 60. And I think that one continues to be kind of one of our lower scoring questions. Question 13, my agency helps me navigate change, was up also 7%, but only at 68%. Some themes to our open-ended question of what we're doing well. People appreciate the flexibility and work-life balance. People made comments that there's good work across the divisions and work teams. And some people said that the agency is inclusive and welcoming, and we're improving on our DEI efforts. Several people mentioned we have a good onboarding practice. Areas to improve though, hiring, retention, pay, lack of opportunities, and workload, which kind of goes on the other side of workload balance. So some questions relating to needing better overall communication. There were some questions that leadership such as EMT is not connected to staff. We need to do a better job of listening. Several people wanted us to bring back the quarterly leadership training that we used to do offsite. And the next slide, please. So these are the parent questions broken down by the divisions. The LCB rated higher in all 4 questions than the enterprise. On question 23, we had 68% versus the enterprise 62. Question 24, we were at 70% versus 63. Question 25, 71 versus 66. And question 26, 71 versus 66. So room for improvement. Those are brand new questions. So hopefully they will carry those forward next year in the same format. So we'll have an opportunity to see if the things that we're doing are making us headway there. Moving forward, we're sharing our results with employees. We've already done that via sending out a message with the overall agency results. Last week we had our breakfast, so we had a question where we asked people what belonging at the LCB looks like to them and asking them how we can support them in change. We're also doing that with the field offices. So once we get all that back, we'll bring that back to probably the pair team and the diversity council and have a further discussion, looking at maybe doing some focus groups or just other ways that we can engage employees with that conversation. There's still conversation about trying to do an open house in the spring, and we could further bring some DEI topics to that if we put together that open house. We have 4 grievances that are still pending that have to do with the separations from COVID. 2 of them have been heard. We're waiting for the decisions, and 2 are in the process of getting scheduled. So Fish and Wildlife did have, I think, 2 or 3 decisions that were slightly different facts, different than ours, but those people did get brought back with back pay. So
Those were enforcement people at Fish and Wildlife.
they were not actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So theirs were a little bit different.
Okay.
So we'll hope that our fact pattern is good and those will hold and continue on with that. And then just some general updates about what's been happening with the DEIB. We've been doing a lot of work with PAIR, and the Diversity Council's been very active. So some of the things that we have going on and some of the things that we're planning to do. I know that the Diversity Council's still working on the employee orientation video. They're planning to interview several people, Rick included, to kind of be able to show that to people when they come on their first day in terms of how the agency embraces DEI. Any questions?
Yeah, on the survey, a couple of things. I know, I think it was during strategic planning, we were talking about what do we do when we get these results and how do we, and so I see that reflected there, which is great. As you work on exactly what vehicle to do that and do it, I'd like to just be engaged in that and take whatever part I can and listening to employees more. That's the part I'm really interested in. Then a couple of, given the finding on the comment about lack of connection with the executive management team, maybe one of, we figure out how to, as part of this process, show that connection, explore that, find a way that so maybe when it is a town hall with the executive management team or something where people get to see those folks and interact with them or something. So we do make that more integrated. And then I would think about, and I'll have to look at what the trend has been on this one, but that question 11, I know how my agency measures success, which is so low, which is so important to this agency and the whole, administration. We should think about we got to get together and talk about that because we have some of the best people in house who are working on that issue, but it's not somehow getting out there. And so I would just ask Rick, you and the team to think about that piece in of itself. Like, okay, that seems to be something that you could say, okay, for this year, that should be a focus area. How do we get people?
It's been an issue for years with us. And what I would share is oftentimes the answer to that question, because it deals with the agency, not the particular divisions. If you ask the question within licensing or enforcement, they'll tell you that they know how their division measures success. Sometimes, and it's kind of interesting, sometimes they're at odds with some of the decisions that we make as leaders. And so it has something to do with that, but I'm going to dig a little bit deeper, but it's always been, the communication question as an agency, and then how we measure success as an agency has always been lower for years. And if I had Brian here, he would tell you all the different ways we're trying to communicate to try to let people know. We only have EMT. I'm going to use it as an example. We have EMT once a month. Every employee has the opportunity to join us for that discussion. And that's an issue that I'm going to share with the management team this afternoon because we meet, because I think that's an interesting point. Do you know what I mean?
Do that, yeah.
That people would feel like they're somehow disconnected from that. I don't quite understand it, but I want to learn more about it because I thought it was an interesting point that was made. And it was just one of the comments, Anita, or was it several made about EMT?
I think she looked at things that had at least a couple people.
Because there were trends and themes.
Okay.
And then on the performance piece on how do you measure success, let's just talk to people and find out what they're thinking, if they are feeling like they know that for their division, what is their division doing that works for them that maybe we could do, or is it how it fits in, or whatever it is. It just seems like it should be an easily fixable thing because we do so much of it.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe we make that part of EMT and we have Jessica come and talk about that every month. And I think, I wondered just the other day, in fact, because we were talking about the social equity program, what sort of attendance we have at EMT from general employees. And it doesn't seem like very many usually. I don't know how many people show up for EMT, but let's encourage them. Let's invite them again. Let's remind people that they can and should. You know, it's a long meeting, so I know they can't all sit through all of it. I can barely sit through all of it, but you know, let's get
Only once a
people,
month, though, yeah.
you know.
I think one of the ideas that the Diversity Council has at NEO is to put together like some coupons that they would, I don't know if they're virtually going to give them to employees to encourage them to like attend a BRG meeting, attend a you know, EMT meeting. So I think if people actually have kind of that individualized invitation.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then I think there might be like a prize if you do like 2 out of 5 suggestions or 3 out of the 5 suggestions. So that's something that they're working on, and I think could be fun and could actually.
Yeah, let's put EMT as part of that. That'd be great. And you know, or maybe it's each division should have somebody at every EMT who could report back to their division if they wanted, you know, and they could do that on a rotating basis. And we at the EMT, we could say, here's the division representatives for this month's meeting. And so all their employees know who it is, and just start to devolve that a little bit, like get people down in the you know, organization who aren't getting to sit at EMT. Ollie?
I remember Jane had made EMT because Dustin would send out emails, any suggestions for the agenda item for EMT, and we wouldn't get anything. She kind of made it a little more tailored to a discussion. And Rick, you were there with this, how she structured EMT, but it was, for an example, if it was something around licensing for this EMT, you're coming to tell us about what you're doing, on. And then Becky would come and she would have a couple of other people of her employees from licensing there giving us an overview of what's going on in licensing. But it was being broken out by division, enforcement, you know, because we weren't getting agenda items. So we kind of said, well, we're going to say what we want to hear or what division we want to hear from and what's going on in your division at EMT.
So, and EMTs are meeting, so we can do, you know, what we can tailor it like we would like. And, you know, I think now we don't have a shortage of items. It's interesting. We often get, you know, responses where people go, yeah, I don't have much, but we fill the time. And I feel like the conversation's gotten better of late, you know, it is more to it. But if there are areas that we want to do, you know, kind of a focus on or a deep dive on, we should just do that, Ollie. And you know, let's think about that and suggest it. And we just send the note, say, we'd like to spend the bulk of our time talking about compliance checks, you know, which is something we've talked about some, or social equity program, whatever it is, and not worry about everybody getting in there for the report and do the more in-depth. I think that.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ollie. We did, Jane did that because frankly, and you said it, David, I don't think the EMTs were as valuable as they are now, as far as people reporting out. So I think to your point, David, it would be good for the board members, knowing that Chandra and, you know, Becky and others are going to be there. If there's specific questions or areas you want them to cover, because usually, you know, what you're getting is like Chandra's just giving you those slides that tell you what's trending from month to month. If there's something specific you want to hear about, hey, we had a discussion about this a week or two ago. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
That allows you to be even more dimensional than just one topic like Jane would do. It would allow you to then, so that meeting is it's really about the agency sharing the operations of the agency with the board members, which is probably why we don't get a lot of people from the outside, but certainly on the inside, I do want to generate more interest of employees to come to that meeting and hear what's being said.
And I would also, okay, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
All right, that's okay. So I was just gonna, I really like that suggestion, Ollie's suggestion, and looking for ways to include more people from the different sections. And one way would be to highlight a different section each time. But I also wanted to say, you know, one of the things I've come to enjoy about working with the LCB is the employee engagement. And, you know, I have been involved in surveys forever, and I really like how this group in particular right now, we're jumping to solutions and we're looking at the ones where we scored low. I also want to celebrate the fact that these are really terrific scores, and that these scores and participation is exemplary. When you look across, I mean, again, I've been involved in these exact same type of surveys for 20 years, and to get the level of participation and to see the increase of the scores from year, and to recognize that where there are opportunities, here we are jumping right into solutions for some of the ones. So just wanted to acknowledge that. The one that stood out to me was the hiring, retention, pay, lack of opportunities, and workload. And I'd be really interested in unpacking that one across the division a little bit more and doing some work. And as a board member, this is an area where I'd be really interested in diving in more. So if we're looking for a board member to lean in a particular area, I just wanted to put out there that I'd be really interested in this particular area.
I think we should, you know, we talked about focus groups at strategic planning, and you mentioned it in your slide. And I think that's one way to do it. And if we want to do one on, say, that question, Jim, maybe you sit there and go to that one and talk to employees. And, you know, I'm particularly interested in the one about performance. How do we measure performance and communication? And, you know, so we should just create those forums and have meetings with people. And I agree. I think, you know, the numbers are great, and it shows people are engaged, feel engaged, but we should, you know, I think what we were hearing from people was what happens then. So we get the survey, and there was a sense of not the follow-up. They wanted more follow-up, you know, this from even division heads, like, we want to do more at that level. So I think it's an opportunity there. And
I think next year's scores will reflect what we do as a result of this. And so
that's
it's really important.
So. Yeah. Okay, good. Any other questions for Anita? No. Okay. Thank you, Anita. Appreciate that. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is board meeting prep and rules update. And we'll turn it over to Dr. Kathy Hoffman, the Policy and Rules Manager. Morning.
Good morning, Chairperson, board members Garrett and Vollendorf, and everyone else in the room. We don't have any action items for the board meeting tomorrow, so I'll just be providing a rules update today, and then I'll provide a rules update at the board meeting tomorrow as well. But starting with cannabis, Canopy project is coming along. Do have some internal meetings happening right now. Still on track to bring a 102 to the board in mid-May, if not a little later than that. And then working on some communication to stakeholders to help with the upcoming growing season, because I know there's some question around that. So collaborating with Director Brady and others to extend some regulatory guidance for the growing season. And we can look for that towards the end of the month, I think, if not the first part of March. Moving on to cannabis advertising, Cassidy has moved that project along nicely. At this point, she's planning on bringing the CR 102 to the board in mid-June, I'm sorry, early June, with finalization sometime toward the end of, first part of August. Looking at the wrong column here on my screen. Apologies for that. With respect to bringing forward the rule petition, there were two rule petitions about minors on licensed premise. The first one had to do with minors being on licensed premise, minors under 16 on licensed premise. And then the other one had to do with minors 16 and over who were accompanying contractors on licensed premise. So that might be apprentice who might be accompanying someone working on an electrical system or HVAC system or something like that. Cassidy will be bringing the 101 forward on that project towards the end of March. So at this point, it looks like March 28th. And so that rule project would be completed sometime in late 23. And then Jeff will be bringing the 101 concerning cannabis sampling to the board on March 1st. Our rulemaking approach on that project is going to be a little different because we're going to do some pre-rule development stakeholder engagement using a different approach to deliberative dialogue. So it's bringing folks together for thematic analysis, still using that, democratic approach to developing those themes, but not using the panel approach that our prior deliberative dialogues have. So under that timeline, we could bring a 102 about mid-May and then have rules completed by the early part of August. And then just quickly on the cannabis side, we received 2 rule petitions I want you to be aware of. First is from John Kingsbury. It has to do with the revocation of medical endorsements in the absence of, in his words, voluntary and affirmative action by the licensee. So we're working on that, and we'll bring a recommendation to you on March 29th. And then the second petition is one that you may have heard Micah Sherman referred to in, I think it was a committee hearing in the first part of January, but it has to do with rather than paying cash for cannabis prior to or at the time of delivery, so this is between a producer and processor, allow payment for the cannabis within 3 days of delivery. So he's offered some language. We received that petition on February 6th, and we'll also bring a recommendation to you on March 29th. So I'll stop with cannabis and ask if there are any questions before I move into alcohol-related rulemaking and general rulemaking. A lot of information there.
Just one point on advertising. That's not something that I haven't really been able to track as much as I would like. And so I would just ask that prior to having Kate, maybe that 102 in hand, to have the opportunity to hear from you and staff about what you've learned and where you're thinking of going and things of that sort. I just want to do a little catch up before we get to draft 102, if I could.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that we do have our regular stakeholder engagement options written into the rule development plan. So lots to come there, but really it's to update the rules. They haven't been updated since 2018. And I think our advertising environment has expanded somewhat.
Yes.
In the way that advertising is shared and promoted. So the social media platforms and various places that we see cannabis advertising now that we didn't in 2018.
And could that be impacted by the bill that's in the legislature? If they...
I think it's too early to speculate at this point. We don't know what's going to happen with that bill. But I think that the rulemaking could go on even in the midst of that bill moving forward, if it does, because that's primarily outdoor advertising.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So if I may, I'll move into alcohol rules in progress. Mm-hmm. As you know, Daniel is going to bring the Class 13 privilege review up CR 101 to you middle of March. I think we've talked about that in the past, but that's based on the rule petition that the board accepted in early January. So hoping to bring the 101 to you mid-March. That would put the 102 roughly the end of June with a 103 first part of August. So hope that we can move that project along pretty rapidly. And then finally, Daniel's been working on the cloud storage project with some internal stakeholder meetings. You approved that 101 on January 25th. At this point, it looks like we'll be able to bring a 102 to you mid-May with the 103 finalization in mid-July. So it looks like there will be a lot of, we'll be bringing some completed packages to you in mid-May, around the time we'll be thinking about implementing any legislative rulemaking that comes of this most recent session. So that's my update for today. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Kathy? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I will turn back to Rick for any general agency updates.
Not too much to share, but one thing that I wanted to share with the board members, and I shared with the licensing division today is how well I think our legislative program is running this year with Mark and Justin and the team. You know, a lot of those bills we heard this morning have to do with licensure, people wanting to find different ways of selling alcohol, cannabis, or just generally changes to the way we regulate the industries. And I just think it really feels smoother. And I think Mark, for being somebody that's brand new, you wouldn't know it. Yeah. And having Justin there as a backup with his experience and knowledge, and then of course Kathy, and then all the divisions. Licensing does a lot of work to help us understand how these licensing bills are going to impact us. So I just wanted to share. We kind of moved quickly, Ollie, to get you to testify yesterday. So forgive us if we went back and forth there for a little bit, but I just think that was a really important testimony that you provided. I think it's synced up well with the rest of the testimony that was made as we shared this morning. So sometimes we just got to move quickly. Wish we would have had that a little better plan, but that's all right. It worked. So just really appreciate the involvement of the board members individually on some of these bills that we've been involved in and in general, but I really feel like it's smooth and working very well. And I want to commend the staff and then the board members for all their work on that. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Rick. Yeah, I would second all that about the ledge plan. I think Mark's doing a fantastic job. It's really nice to have him up there, and it's not easy, so good on him. Last up is board member and executive assistant reports. Dustin, anything to share?
Not today. Thank you, Chair.
Jim, Ollie?
No, other than I'll be there Thursday for the hearing in the House.
Okay, great, good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say I was at licensing's division meeting this morning. It was great. They spent some time talking about Black History Month. Tyrone Jordan Oliver, who's the chair of the statewide build group and is a licensing employee, did a little presentation on Black history, the history of that month and how far back that goes, which was fascinating. And then talked about what Build is doing, and you should check it out. There's two upcoming Build events left. One this Friday at UW Tacoma, and then one right at the end of the month, which I don't know where it is, but there is information out of there, so I'd have you take a look at that. And also, to your point, Rick, they got a legislative report from Caitlin, and the amount of work they do, and every division has it, but licensing, so much of this is in their realm. I think they did something like 40 fiscal notes or something like that, which is even hard to imagine, but an incredible amount of work they're doing as well to keep up on this. So it was really good to hear and to see that. So I appreciate them inviting me to sit in on that this morning. And then Rick came and talked to them as well, which was very well received. They enjoyed that. I think they thought maybe it was kind of their goodbye moment with you, Rick. They had the slideshow and everything ready, but Rick told them not to, rush it. Had a couple months left, so but it was good. So thanks to the licensing folks for having me in. With that, we will adjourn the caucus meeting, and we will be back tomorrow for a board meeting. So see you all then. Have a good day. Happy Valentine's Day.
Marley, you're always welcome to join